There's a lot of talk about the incoming collapse of the Republican Party, but there's a lot less talk about the incoming collapse of the Democratic Party, which I view as much more likely. Why? I'll give you one reason. Kamala Harris. So to start off, why is Kamala Harris important to the collapse of the Democratic Party? Well, it's very simple. She will be next up for the Democratic Party in 2028. How do I know? It's a simple look at history. After each modern Democratic president, the next person up for the Democratic Party has been their vice president. In 1968, after Lyndon B. Johnson announced he would not be running for re-election, the Democratic Party nominated his vice president, Hubert Humphrey. This was despite Bobby Kennedy and Eugene McCarthy being much more popular with the voters. In 1984, 4 years after Jimmy Carter's presidency, the Democrats nominated his vice president, Walter Mondale, despite the fact that Jimmy Carter didn't even win re-election. In 2000, after Bill Clinton's time in office, his vice president, Al Gore, ran virtually uncontested for the Democratic nomination. In 2016, after President Obama's time in office, his vice president, Joe Biden, would have been a favorite for the nomination, but he didn't run due to the recent death of his son, Beau, in 2015. Saturday Night Live even poked fun at the fact that Joe Biden would have been welcomed into the primaries in one of their debates.
Now, Bert, before we begin, we at CNN want to say a quick word to Vice President Joe Biden. Joe, if you decide to run at any time tonight, we will happily make room for you on the stage. No pressure, but we'd love to have you. Wouldn't we, candidates?
So it's clear that win or lose for Joe Biden this year, the next person up for the Democratic Party in 2028 will be Kamala Harris. So why does this matter? Well, it's clear that Kamala Harris is not a skilled politician and is deeply unpopular in the United States. To understand why, you need to look at her background. Kamala Harris doesn't have years of media training like Donald Trump did, or decades in Congress like Joe Biden has. Kamala Harris got her political start with help from a guy named Willie Brown, a former Speaker of the California General Assembly, whom she dated despite being 31 years younger than him. He was also married. She later threatened him. According to Willie Brown, the difference between Kamala Harris and other politicians is that Harris is the only one who, after I helped her, sent word that I would be indicted if I so much as jaywalked while she was district attorney. Kamala Harris later became Attorney General of California, but not through popular support like a lot of other politicians. She became Attorney General of California by consolidating power with the help of other powerful, influential Democrats in California, such as Dianne Feinstein, Barbara Boxer, and Nancy Pelosi. Harris spent just 4 years in the United States Senate, and it shows. She is untested, awkward, and uncomfortable in the spotlight.
Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time.
I couldn't reconcile it. Now I can. We did it, Joe. We are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe.
Now, you can disagree with me on all this, but it is clear that voters do not like Kamala Harris. She has a higher unfavorability rating than Chuck Schumer, Ron DeSantis, Joe Biden, and Donald Trump. Voters do not like Kamala Harris. So how will this lead to the collapse of the Democratic Party? Well, it's clear that the Democratic Party has internal division. The Democratic Party sees infighting between its more radical wing, supported by people like Bernie Sanders, and its more moderate or centrist wing. Joe Biden was able to unify the Democratic Party. Kamala Harris will not be able to unify the Democratic Party. And if Kamala Harris is the Democratic nominee in 2028, which she likely will be, they will have an unpopular leader, which will hurt Democrats all the way down the ballot. This could lead to Republican control of the presidency, the Senate, and even the House of Representatives. The Republican Party already controls the Supreme Court, so this would lead to total Republican control. regardless of the results of the 2024 election between Trump and Biden, 2028 could see a monumental collapse for the Democratic Party.